So my father was born on Long Island in 1931, and he was born again to Signe Carolina Scipari, who became Christensen, and Oa Christensen, his father. And one of the more formative events of his life was, of course, Oa's death. I really have only wondered a little bit about how much anyone knew about Oa's health. Oa would have died at about 45 years old. He was born in 1898 and he died in 1943. Obviously, this was in the middle of World War II. In one way or another, since he was about 13 or 14 years old when he left Denmark, he spent his entire life working on commercial vessels, ships, going back and forth between different locations, and then eventually wound up in the Brooklyn Navy Yard for some time, where he took a role as a helpful or second rigger. It's totally possible that Oa was heavily exposed to asbestos. While he had been registered for the draft in 1942, he was discharged from the Brooklyn Navy Yard in June of 1943 and died of August the same year. Now, in August of 1943, my father would have been about 12 and a half years old. But I really don't know how well my father knew his father. But in the years after this, they were really difficult times for my father and my grandmother. There's a lot of pieces around the time where they don't all fit together. And one of those is, of course, the whole teeth thing, which I mentioned a few episodes back. One way or the other, my father wore dentures from the time that he was very young for the rest of his life. Now, I heard multiple stories about this. They never got too extreme, but one was that he had his front teeth knocked out in a car accident or something like that, which my mother told me, and I think my father told me, and honestly, that confused my imagination for many years as I was basically trying to just figure out what were the logistics of how one would smash your teeth out in a car. And the story was always that it happened really fast. Well, the story was never always. The story always changed, was the truth of the matter. I mean, just recently I heard from my brother that apparently my father also had like a gum disease when he was younger, and then had talked to his dentist into whatever. He got all of his teeth taken out. And in his high school graduation pictures, he's smiling. So we have that much going on. After graduating high school, wound up going and getting a 2-year associate's degree out at Farmingdale, which he called the Aggie School, which was in the middle of the war efforts, and after had been turned into suddenly a big technical college. And my father, with a degree, was able to get into the officer training corps of the newly formed Air Force. He was able to get to the rank of second lieutenant. And this helped him later on to get a job with TWA when he graduated. And it's really interesting to me to think about how different that is from my mother's experience. She did not finish high school. She never did, actually. It was something that kind of always bothered her. She had some brief thing about getting her GED when I was young, but I don't really remember her going through with that. It's also been kind of fascinating to me to actually find some of the little stories about other folks, because there was clearly another person in my dad's life who was important. And then there was also Teddy and Ernie, which I had always heard. And then there's this other woman who I really don't know who she is, but she is also she kind of photographs badly. Like I only have about 5 or 6 pictures of her, and in 3 of them, she's just either like eyes shut or looking the wrong way or something awkward. But either way, somebody clearly important to my father in that time. Just as with my mom, there were 2 or 3 other people who were at that time. The person I called the butcher boy recently, I got corrected on that. That is not the butcher boy. He's another one entirely. That's actually a man who would then become my uncle, Ray, who married my mother's younger sister, Joanne. A little bit awkward. I'm not really sure how that one worked out. This guy, Ray, that my mom had been seeing, wound up taking off and getting married to my mom's little sister. But then there's Smitty, and I found the letter, and so Smitty's letter, the 1st of March, I think about 1956, which means that it is just a little bit over 1 year from when my mom was going to get married. It might even be the same year that they were getting married. This all happened pretty quick. Dearest Ruth, the thoughts I'm about to relate to you are such that I think they're better written than spoken. Since my little dream disintegrated last Saturday night, I've been in a dilemma, wondering, where do we go from here? I rather feel like the ship that lost its rudder. Pushkin says it this way: for one last time, I am embracing your image, all but lost to me. My heart corrodes within me as I lose you and cast off alone into the sea. When I say I love you, it's not a vague idea that I'm half sure of. Around the States, in Europe, and at school, I've been fortunate to have associated with a good cross-section of the world's women. Not sure that's a selling point, Smitty. Although I can say that they were all swell, not one of them has ever moved me or created such an atmosphere of happiness within me as you. Without the deep influence of your companionship and your love, which I eventually hoped for, I see no good reason for progress. But that's the way the ball bounces, I guess. All I want for you is your happiness. Christ knows you're too good to be deprived of that. In closing, let me ask that you check in with me if anything goes wrong between you two. Please don't hesitate to call, as I seriously doubt that I'll be able to develop an interest in another girl for a hell of a long time. Always remember me as the guy who'd like you for his wife, Smitty. I mean, holy shit, Smitty, that's a letter. Smitty quotes Pushkin. My dad wrote a lot of letters, and he never once quoted Pushkin, that's for sure. He quoted a lot of fight schedules and a lot of manuals. My mother edited so many things. She threw out so many letters. She got rid of so much that was referred to in these different documents over the years. And yet, with all of that, Smitty's letter made the cut. And this one stayed.